Good morning, and I hope you're having a nice cup of coffee. And what I have today is something probably that will resonate with a lot of people. Today, my cup means really, it means a lot to me, and it will mean a lot to a lot of people. So let me get a sip of coffee. Now we'll turn it around. It's probably difficult to read. So if you have a hard time reading it, what it basically says is just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. Think about that. Just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second edition of Coffee with Dr. Z, which is right now every Sunday morning at 9. Last week, I talked about rescuing my 2 dogs and welcoming them into my home. And I told about my immigration story because I felt that people had to listen and hear about a real immigrant story, about a real immigrant success story, about a real immigrant horror story. And not to lump us all together, but basically to see us as human beings. And that in the present environment and atmosphere we have now, it can be a little bit depressing. It can be a little bit exhausting. And that's why I thought this second edition today would be about making sure that we do not get exhausted, tired, and give up the fight. So another sip. So a lot of you are probably still sleeping and might not be able to hear this live, but hopefully you listen to this later on. This coffee mug means a lot because about 10 years ago, we had some family tragedy. My husband lost his mother, and it was a sudden event. A year later, he lost his father, or his stepfather, and he had already lost his biological father when he was a young child. He also lost his sister before she turned 50 years of age. So his stepfather was the only close-knit family member left, and he also died suddenly. Just as we were coming home from his funeral, my father fell ill, and he died the next day. 3 deaths in the span of 1 year. 2 fathers gone in the span of 2 weeks. Previous to that, we had a healthcare crisis. We almost lost our business. One after another. Personal, financial, professional tragedies. Needless to say, my husband and I and our families were all devastated. And if I didn't have the training I had of being always whipped around when I was a kid with trying to climb up a mountain of misery, I probably would have folded too. So that's why this mug is important. I was feeling so down, so beat up, and I was at the airport in San Diego, walking around aimlessly, waiting for my flight, emotionally drained, just as you all probably have felt at one point or another, and almost ready to give up and say, I don't know, please. I looked up and said, stop beating up on me. Can you choose somebody else? I don't know if I have anything else more to give. I went to the bookstore or the coffee shop. Yeah, the coffee shop. my favorite place when I'm feeling depressed, and found this mug. It called out to me. First of all, I like the color. It's a nice shade of blue. I went closer because I really couldn't read the handwriting. And it said, that's probably what the caterpillars felt. They're little, they're kind of ugly looking, they're hairy creatures. Nobody really likes to keep them as a pet. And they oftentimes are maligned, beat up, stepped on. Nobody really cares about caterpillars. They have to sometimes hide in the ground. And yet, when it retreats into a cocoon and does the most of its work, it comes out as a beautiful butterfly. And I saw that, and I felt that God was talking to me. Maybe my dad, maybe my father-in-law, my mother-in-law. Who knows? But it caught my attention. Because at that point, I felt like that caterpillar, so beat up, that I had to retreat, regroup, rethink. I don't think there's anyone out there listening, or maybe listening to this later on. I don't think any one of you would say, oh, I've never had that moment. You know we all have. And right now, our country is undergoing a period of darkness. A period where we all feel like little caterpillars, powerless to do anything. We're on the ground just crawling aimlessly, or so we think. I was also interviewed by the Pensacola News Journal, and the article came out yesterday. For the first time, they actually gave us some attention. It's funny. I've always felt like the underdog all my life. And that's exactly what they called me. The underdog. The candidate who has not raised enough money to be what they would call viable. The candidate who came in late, a little wannabe. The little engine that could. The caterpillar who thought she could make a difference. Well, you know what, folks? That's the position I've always found myself in. Every little step that I took in my life, I was the underdog. And there are many times in my life I could have given up. But let me tell you again that my DNA does not contain a gene that says quitter. No, not in my family. You see, once again, I will mention my father, because he lives in me. His spirit lives in me. If you talk about someone who's always been an underdog, that would be him. He was never given much of a chance to succeed in life. And yet, he did. In my eyes, he was a very successful man. Maybe not to most people. Because you know what? He never had a big bank account. Neither do I. He didn't live by the water in a grand mansion or any of those things that we consider success. But what he did was educate all of us and gave us strength of character. And to me, that is a lifelong gift that has no dollar sign attached to it. So let me see what you guys are saying at this point. Oh, hi, Suzanne. And I think Taylor's watching too. Hello. Here's another thought. So many things are happening right now that it's easy to give up. When I started this campaign, yes, people were surprised. But people have been reaching out to me saying, Dr. Z, we need your voice. Your voice is different. Your experiences are different. You seem to be like one of us, even if you're a doctor. You've been through difficulty. You've been through the fire and survived. Oh, yes, I have. I've been stabbed in the back. I've been betrayed. I've been left behind. I haven't been given much of a chance. No banks gave me a chance when I tried to borrow for my business. I'd like to say I did it all on my own, but you know what? I didn't. Because there were Americans who still trusted in me. My first few patients, they trusted in me. I had 3 patients when I opened my doors. Now I'm so busy. Whenever I try to think about why am I even doing this, whenever I feel like giving up, I look at this cup again. And I say to myself, no, Jennifer, this period of darkness is just one way so that you can regroup, rechannel your energies. I can't give up. There are still 2,300 children missing. They're not reunited with their families. I cannot think of any mother out there who thinks this is okay. And yet there are. So you know what, folks? Those of us who think alike, let's not give up. Whenever we feel tired, whenever we feel defeated, whenever we feel like we're not making any difference in the world, that's when we are inside that cocoon just working quietly in the background. That's when we work the hardest, because the little ones out there are scared and powerless and don't have their moms and dads behind them. We can't abandon those children. Now we're upset because Justice Kennedy left, and apparently this was motivated once again by money. Lots and lots of money exchanged. This is not the time to give up. This is not the time to give up. We have to fight. All those rights that people have died for, worked hard for, we can't sit back and say, I'm just too tired of resisting. Because make no mistake, that's what the other side wants. They want us to be tired of resisting. They called it resistance fatigue. Well, I'm here this morning to appeal to all of you. If you need to get a cup of coffee, go have lots of it. Because we need to band together. Whatever petty little differences we have is not worth all this infighting and who gets to have the top billing and all that stuff. No, the children need us. Get your egos in check. Get your fatigue in check. Get everything in check. And look at the big picture. We cannot be tired for just one bit. And if you are, get a cup of coffee. Share it with someone who's like-minded. Don't waste your time trying to convince other people who are already convinced that we are the evil ones. Sometimes we feel like we are outnumbered. But so what? There's others out there who are just quietly watching, afraid to come out. Let's show them. Let's show them that we will be strong together, fighting the evils of this world. Now let me get a cup of coffee and read what you're saying. Preach, Dr. Z. That's right, Mitch. Hi, hello there. I'm sorry I can't read all of that right now, but let me sip. Remember, we have work to do, people. We have a lot of work to do. This is the phase that we are going to have our metamorphosis, is what we call it. The change. Change is difficult. Think about it. If the Reverend Martin Luther King gave up right away, if he gave up right away, would we have civil rights movement? If the people gave up right away when he was shot, would we have this movement of the civil rights and finally getting those rights? Think about the women who fought 100 years ago, or not even 100 years ago, so that we could vote. So that we can vote, and because we could vote and we could have some kind of equality, now we can run for office. I wouldn't be talking here today, inviting you for a cup of coffee every Sunday morning, if not for those women who were courageous and said, oh no, we too have rights. There are so many rights at stake. So many. If we keep quiet now, that darkness will continue. This is what happened when people kept quiet during the time that the Nazis were trying to undermine their society. They wanted to clamp down the free press. They called them also the fake press. Fake news. Sounds familiar? We got to get our voices louder. You know what? I will wear that Underdog Badge with pride. Because usually it's the underdogs who know what's going on in the world. We don't have any privileges just handed out to us. We don't have silver spoons in our mouth. We have to work for everything that we've got. Let me tell you another personal story. My second son loves baseball. And I know I've told many of you about how we felt frustrated. My son worked day in and day out, probably worked harder than anyone I knew. He would be first on the field. He would practice with the coaches. He would pick up the balls, be the bat boy, be the ball boy. He would be the last one to leave, still practicing, and still be benched. One day he came up to me and said, Mom, I really don't know what else I can do. I love baseball. I'm giving it 2,000% more than any of my other teammates. What's wrong with me? Why? Why do they always look at me as if I don't know how to play? What do you say to a little boy like that who's about to give up on his dream? You've been in that position. We had a long, hard talk, and I reminded him once again of what has happened to his grandparents, about how they fought all their lives, about how I fought for my right to even achieve my American dream or even survive. And he looked at me and he said, but Mom, why do we always have to fight? How come it's much easier for other people? I don't see them exerting much effort. I watch you work so hard to try and save those children, to try and deliver quality health care. You take a pay cut. You work longer hours. You're always on call. People are always calling you for help. And yet you don't seem to get the respect like the other doctors. We don't live in a mansion. We drive the same old cars. What's wrong with us? I looked at him straight in the eye and I said, son, there's nothing wrong with us. Be proud of what we do. Because if you measure success just by all those that you mentioned, that's superficial. It's a weak foundation. You haven't built up the bricks strong enough. You're just on stilts. You want immediate gratification. And then when the real storms come in, when the hurricane comes in, they'll be the first one to fall. The first one to fall. Because they never knew how to stand up tall on strong legs. So I tell you once again, my fellow resistors, this is not the time to quit. As one famous poem says, rest if you must, but you mustn't quit. If we need to prop up each other, that's what we do. Let us not tear each other down. We are outnumbered at this point, or so we think. If we put up a solid front, a strong front, it is much harder to beat us down. This is beyond just my little ego. This is beyond just anybody's ego. This is the time we think about all those children, our fellow brothers and sisters who are LGBTQ, the women who will lose their rights. Think about this too. We're all talking about Roe versus Wade. How about LGBTQ rights? They can roll that back. And how about the women who need reproductive health care? You know, it hasn't even been 60 years ago that people of different colors couldn't intermarry. My husband and I are for different cultures and colors and religions. This marriage would not have happened. But a courageous couple from Virginia stood up, and ironically, they were called the Loving Couple. That was their last name. We're overlooking that. They too went to the Supreme Court, and you know what stood out? When I heard this story, is when the lawyer asked Mr. Loving, "What do you want me to tell the Supreme Court?" And he said, "Tell them I love my wife. Tell them I love my wife." Think about that. Simple, but strong. Because that's really all that matters. What matters is that we treat each other with respect. And right now, we really need to prop up each other, not tear each other down. This is the time we look to our neighbor and say, really, this is okay? Move on if they're the cruel, evil ones who think this is okay. Move on. Find the next person who's on your side. If we have to be louder, then we have to be louder. But we have to be louder together. And all this protesting is good. They will know that we do not stand for cruelty and evil. But we must back it up with action. Action. A lot of people may sit down again because they're beat up. They're like the little caterpillars who think, yeah, I go and vote, but it doesn't really make a difference. Same people go in there. And you know why the same people go in there and represent you? Because you did not go out there and vote. So I know I'm getting a little passionate here, just like I always do. But if we don't have the passion, then how will they know that we strongly believe in what we believe in? They claim family values. I'm a little confused. What family values? They claim they're conservative. About what? They're not shy about their cruelty. They're not shy about saying that those children and those families deserve what's going on. They're not shy about putting everybody down. Why should we? I got a few more minutes. Let me take another sip. Let me read a few comments. Let me see. Yep. Quitting is not an option. Resting is okay, but quitting is not an option. To all those who will listen to this Facebook Live event, or maybe listen later on, I have never quit on anybody or anything. I have always, when I plan something, go with it till the end. Have I succeeded 100% of the time? I'm not going to lie to you. No. But because I try, I have a good batting average. As you very well know, we love baseball. Even the best hitter doesn't hit the ball 100% of the time. In fact, the highest average that has been known to man is even below 500. Below 500, which means half the time they strike out or they fly out. Even Babe Ruth may hit home runs, but a lot of times he struck out. But he did say something. If he doesn't even attempt to hit the ball, he will never score a home run. And this may not be a matter of home runs, people. This means that sometimes we may just have to bat and run to first base, score singles, steal second, whatever it takes to bring our issues into the home plate. We cannot score home runs all the time, but we can score by helping each other move from one base to another. There are 9 innings to a game, and sometimes it may go into extension or overtime or whatever it is you call it. But the game is not over. The game is not over. If you give up now, we will not have a country. We will not have our freedoms. If you think I'm exaggerating, think again and look around you. All of which we enjoy right now has been fought for very, very hard by people before us. Let's not let them down. If Rosa Parks did not have the courage to sit down in that bus, we would not have a civil rights movement. Martin Luther King had a dream. So do all of us. All of us have a dream for a better life, not only for ourselves, but for our children. So let's not give up. Consider this as the time that we caterpillars must sometimes retreat, go into a cocoon, and plan our next move. But I challenge each and every one of you. Find your fellow caterpillars. Do your darnest, hardest work to make sure that people are aware these midterms are not just any other midterms. If we do not change the people who are sitting in Congress and the Senate and our governors, we will lose the opportunity to fight. And we may lose everything else we have. So my fellow caterpillars, I shall end this now. Maybe have a nice little breakfast with my family. And I hope you have one too. Go and undergo your work. Do your work. And I hope that pretty soon, after the general election, we will emerge as butterflies. Beautiful and proud of the work we have done. And as one famous boxer said, we may dance like butterflies, but in Congress, I'll make sure I'll sting like a bee. Thank you, and have a good day.